Welcome to Real Life Fiction Stories, and thank you for joining me. What a night, huh? The fire making the shadows swirl. Looks like light waging war against the dark, trying to burn it from the face of the earth. Reminds me of a story. The story I'm told is true. It happened to an ancient relative of a friend of mine and began on a night not unlike this one not so long ago, and well, just so happens to have been in this area, not close, but not too far away. A story about a girl who finds herself face to face with the forces of light and dark. A story about what battle between the two can look like, and about the choices such an encounter can bring. Her running was frantic, her arms swinging wildly, knocking branches out of her way, her tiny feet moving as fast as they could. Branches snapped behind her as the beast closed in. The girl was nearly out of breath now. She didn't know how long she had been running, only that she could run no more. She turned around to see if she'd gained any ground. She had not, and she stared into the glowing red eyes of the indescribable terror. The momentary lapse of attention to what was in front of her caused her to miss the exposed tree roots, and she tripped. Instinctively, she curled into a ball and awaited the inevitable. The growl of the beast as it was about to claim its prey was cut short, and a warm spray landed on her cheek. A cry of inhuman pain filled the air, and her eyes shot open. The beast's right arm lay next to her, its talons convulsing, still blindly searching out its prize. The beast looked woefully at his stump, then at his appendage impotent upon the ground. It bellowed in a rage that shook the ground the girl lay on, and its eyes burned a crimson that made the sun seem dim as it glistened off the sword of the man who took its arm. The sword-bearer dismounted his horse and sent it off into the forest away from danger. The beast did not wait for the man to take a stance and rushed him, grabbing him by the helmet, ripping it off and tossing it into the trees. Disappointed it was not the man's head, it reached out again, but the sword-bearer was ready, and had raised his sword and shifted to the side, shoving his blade into the beast's claw, piercing it straight through. The beast retracted his arm, shaking it violently until the sword was cast out and away. It again had reached out, and this time successfully, and grabbed the man by his face, and slowly began to squeeze, wanting to take its time, to enjoy the crunch and pop and ooze that would leap from between its dagger-like fingers. Suddenly, the beast could no longer feel its claw around the man's head. It could not feel its arm. It only felt the same burning at its shoulder it had felt when it lost its right arm. It looked down and saw the head of one of the largest battle axes it had ever seen in its 2,000 years on this plane buried into the ground. It turned to look behind it, and as it did, its arms separated from its body, still clinging to the man's face as he was trying to pry it off of him. Another man with eyes that burned nearly as hard as its own stared back at it, clutching the handle attached to the battle axe that had removed its remaining arm. Before the beast could blink, the axe blade was freed from the earth, and a wide arc severed the beast's head from its neck, sending it tumbling into the ferns and wildflowers, leaving the body to collapse like a bundle of dried sticks.
Can you please help me get this filthy creature's claw off of my face?
A muffled but very vexed voice called after the axe-wielder. The girl who had been sat unblinking the entire time turned to see the beast's claw still clasped around the sword-bearer's face, as he bent and struggled in vain to rip the thing from him. "Hold still!" The large frame of the axe-wielder held a large voice, and it bellowed strong and deep through the forest. "I'll cut you loose. Where's your knife anyway? The beast knocked that from you too, you grease-fingered do-beater." The axe-wielder had pulled his dagger from the sheath on his thigh, and began cutting the talons of the beast's claw off its hand. "It's in my pack," the sword-bearer exclaimed as he gasped for air. "It pokes me when we ride," he finished between breaths. The large man stared at his small friend with a look of horror shaded in amusement. "You slay the evils of this world, banish darkness and wield power of light against villainous creatures beyond the nightmares of men and gods. And your knife poking you when you ride bothers you enough to leave it out of constant reach." A twig snapped as the girl shifted her weight, and caused the two men to flick their heads in unison to a small figure sat among the ferns.
Excuse me, sirs. I was collecting berries when that monster came after me. I don't live too far, and my parents will be missing me, so I'll be on my way, sirs."
The girl, flustered and anxious, attempted to make her escape. Despite any questions she may have had at the time, the only thing she wanted more than anything in the world was to be home safe with her family again. Let her parents explain the beast, she thought. Hold, girl. Are you alright? Do you need any care? My brother and I are able to heal to a degree should you need it. The larger of the two men boomed, letting his axe rest across his massive shoulders.
No, sis, thank you,
The girl broke off. She'd become fixated on the gem around the sword bearer's neck. She was noticing it for the first time. It was deep purple, almost black, that was slowly and steadily pulsating it, causing it to emanate a faint glow. A shrill guttural howl, unlike anything the girl had heard before, filled the air, followed by cacophony of animals in flight. "We must hurry," the large man said, looking at his companion, then turned to the girl. "You said you don't live far from here. Do you have water on your land?"
We have a well, sir.
The girl burst forth with questions as they fled, and the axe-wielder let her know as much as he deemed fair. "The amulet around my brother's neck is from a cave not far from here. It has great power that we hope to use for a noble cause, though indeed, the object itself is most foul." "That's brother in purpose, not family. Swine will fly the day my mother lay with his father," the sword-bearer interjected. "Irrelevant! Do you speak only to drown the wind from your ears?" the axe-wielder growled, then continued. "It was guarded by two of those things back there. We thought we had given them the slip, but in pursuit of us, the offspring had found you." Another growl, this time right behind the three. "Where's the well?" the axe-wielder shouted. They had just broken through the forest, and the homestead was in view.
"Just behind that hill next to the house,"
the girl pointed as she yelled. "Girl, you warn your family. Brother, see they're safe. I will try and lead it away and drop the pearl." The girl had no idea what he meant by his plan, other than she needed to get to her family. The sword-bearer said nothing, only picked the girl up by the back of her collar, lifting her up off the ground as he sprinted at a speed she had only experienced on horseback. The axe-wielder had not been fool enough to take his eyes off of what was in front of him, but when he reached the well, he found himself alone. With no time to wonder at the fate of the others, knowing full well he was their only hope, he fumbled around the small bag that hung around his waist, and pulled a pearl from it. He clutched it in his hands, reciting an ancient prayer before dropping it into the well. The sword-bearer and the girl burst into the door of the small rural home, and were met with the girl's parents holding her infant sister. "Hide!" The sword-bearer yelled just in time for a great and mighty claw to rip the house in two from right to left, collapsing the roof on top of them all. The monster, giant and terrible, 5 times the height of a man and that of its progeny, thrust its talons into what was left of the cob home and grabbed the sword-bearer by the middle, pinning his right arm to his side. The sword-bearer screamed as his bones snapped and turned to powder within his flesh as the beast crushed him. The pearl did not take long to begin its transformation. Within seconds of its immersion, the air around the well filled with a cloud thick and white, and a storm seemed to rage within it. The wings spread out of the mist, and a great winged beast of fire came forth screeching as it flew towards the enormous monstrosity as it crushed the sword-bearer. It slammed into the beast's body with a force that shook the mountains themselves and burst into light that petrified the beast in an instant. The stone figure of the monster cracked as clay in the sun and fell into a pile of stone and dust. No other trace of either creature was left. The sword-bearer lay against the broken vestige of the home's wall, his spine crushed at the waist, no longer able to feel anything below his belt. His arm, a sack of flesh, pulverized bone that hung at his side. Both the girl's parents lay dead, covering their crying infant child, their last act to save her life successful. The girl wept as she bent to pick up her sister. The axe-wielder had been calling for his brother, but stopped as soon as he reached the top of the hill. He could see even from there the damage that had been done. He solemnly walked up to his friend and knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder, but saying nothing. The sword-bearer had been staring at the girl and her sister when he broke the silence. "The amulet can give life, but only in equal measure to the purity and potential of the life given."
"What do you mean?"
she asked with a crack in her voice. "The amulet transfers and magnifies life energy. If you want to bring back someone old, or who's not very strong or powerful, an equal life will be enough to offer the stone for their return. However, if they were powerful in life, or if you wish to raise more than one, only a life that has done great things, that has caused life to flourish, or that is yet to be tarnished by the darkness of the world with still so much to offer, is enough to accomplish the task. It was around my neck before the beast grabbed me. I'm afraid I've lost it since then. If we find it, I may be able to do one last good thing before I die. I only pray my good deeds will be enough to bring them both back." Brother, you will continue the quest and ensure the amulet fulfills its destiny. The axe-wielder nodded.
Would you give your life for my parents?
The girl said, desperately trying not to break into sobbing. What greater sacrifice is there than to ensure the future is cared for? My life has been long. I have done much, and alas, I am beyond healing. To rest on such a last act would bring me much joy. She watched for a moment in disbelief as the large axe-wielding man, aged but agile, began to sift through the debris before she handed her sister to the sword-bearer to aid in the search. Careful, girl, the sword-bearer said sternly, grabbing her arm before taking the child. If you stumble upon it, do not let it touch your skin. It is a wicked thing that does miracles, and a mere touch is enough to bring it to life. The two scrabbled through the rubble in pursuit of the missing amulet, but it was the girl who found it. She picked it up by the chain and thought back to what the man had said. She thought of the love her parents had given her and her sister, and the sacrifices they had made for them. How happy she was with them, and how her sister would never know that. She realized she wanted her parents back, but not so much for her. It was for her sister. And what of the world? So few heroes except the ones in song. Girl, are you all right? The sword-bearer said to the girl's back. She clutched the stone in her hand, and there was a flash of purple light so bright the men shielded their eyes, and heard a clunk as something with weight landed on the earth, and coughing as life entered the girl's parents once again. A great warmth poured over the sword-bearer's body, and feeling flowed again through his legs, and his arm restored anew. When their vision returned, the girl was gone, and only the amulet was left lying on the floor.